You know that picture, the one you always see, a helicopter battling the elements, pulling someone up. It's really powerful.
It really is. And the story behind it, Combat Search and Rescue, CSR, it's just as gripping.
Yeah, exactly. So today, we're going deep on how that capability evolved right up to, well, the latest thing,
Yeah.
the HH-60W Jolly Green II.
And we've got some great stuff to look at. There's this image on Reddit, showing the new one next to the old Pave Hawk. Really sets the scene.
Oh, cool, side by side.
Yeah, and then an Army recognition piece about it arriving in Europe. Plus, rotorheadsrust.us has this incredibly detailed history of CSAR itself.
Okay.
Wikipedia, of course, on the Pave Hawk, the HH-60. And Flight Global dug into the crazy testing the new one went through. Extreme conditions stuff.
Right. So our mission today really is to trace that journey. How did we get to the Jolly Green II, understand its roots, what it does, and, appreciate the legacy.
Absolutely. It's a story of constant innovation.
Okay, so let's get into it, going way, way back. And you might be surprised, the whole idea of CSAR, it started way before helicopters were even a thing.
That's spot on. We think helicopters now, but the groundwork, well, it was laid much earlier. WWI, the 20s, 30s, right up to WWII.
So what did that look like, if not helicopters?
Mostly fixed-wing planes for medevac, and crash rescue boats if someone went down at sea. Pretty basic stuff initially.
And didn't the Germans, the Luftwaffe, actually have a pretty organized system during World War II?
They really did. Their rescue service was surprisingly effective, used boats, seaplanes, but the key thing was they standardized survival gear.
Ah, standardization. Like what?
Things we almost take for granted now. Bright green dye markers for the water, portable radios, those yellow inflatable dinghies, and life vests.
Right, makes sense. Visibility, communication.
Exactly. And that standardization, it was a real game changer. Imagine the morale boost for air crews. Plus, the Allies definitely took notice and learned from it.
I bet. Knowing there's a system, specific gear,
Yeah.
that must have helped mentally. And the RAF, they saw the need pretty quickly during the Battle of Britain.
Oh, absolutely. Losing trained pilots was devastating. They realized fast they needed a way to get those guys back. It was strategically vital.
So they set something up?
Yeah, by late 1940, they teamed up with the Royal Navy, had communication networks, protocols, a proper joint effort.
Okay, so what about the Americans? The USAAF, starting WWII, were they on the same page? Sounds like maybe not quite.
Yeah, they were a bit behind initially. Not really any dedicated units, not much survival training or gear for the crews. But the sheer scale of U.S. air operations flying everywhere, it quickly became obvious they needed a proper rescue program. General Hap Arnold himself pushed for it.
So they had to kind of build it on the fly. Did they look at what the British were doing in Europe?
They did. Smart move, really. In Europe, they basically plugged into the existing RAF air-sea rescue setup, adopted the British methods, like radio fixer stations, to locate downed planes, using fighter-spotter planes to find crews and drop supplies. By mid-43, U.S. units were right in there, learning the ropes.
It's interesting how these early units were cobbled together, like the 5th Emergency Rescue Squadron. Their aircraft list sounds like a bit of everything.
It really was. Formed in 45. They flew P-47 fighters, for spotting, OA-10 Catalinas, those amphibious planes for rescue and patrol, and even modified B-17s called Dumbos.
Dumbos, what did they do?
They dropped lifeboats and survival gear. It shows the kind of resourcefulness they needed back then, just using whatever worked.
And it wasn't just planes, right? You mentioned boats earlier. Were those involved too?
Definitely. The Army quartermaster actually ran boat squadrons at first. Then the USAAF took over. They ended up using a standard 85-foot rescue boat design.
Huh. Training for that was stateside.
Yeah, down at Keesler Field in Mississippi. So you see this parallel development, air and sea rescue capabilities growing together.
Okay, but the Pacific, that must have been a whole different ballgame. Huge distances, jungles, mountains.
Totally different set of problems. No established British system to plug into like in Europe. Early efforts were much more localized, kind of ad hoc.
Like that Major Small you mentioned.
Right. Major John H. Small Jr. in New Guinea started with almost nothing but still rescued hundreds. The 2nd ERS, trained back in the States, was one of the first dedicated units out there and quickly proved its worth.
And eventually it became more of a joint effort in the Pacific too. Navy, Marines getting involved.
Yes, definitely. As the war went on, especially with the big bombing campaigns and the island hopping, cooperation between USAAF, Navy, and Marine units became crucial.
Makes sense. A lot of people going down, unfortunately.
Yeah. Even during the atomic bomb missions in August 45, there was a joint USAF Navy CR task force specifically set up. Shows how integrated it had become by then.
Wow. And we also heard about some real heroes, like Blackie's gang in the CBI theater, China, Burma, India.
Captain John L. Blackie Porter, yeah. His unit was incredible. Based in India, tiny team, but they'd go anywhere, fly in, trek through jungle to get to cruise, especially those flying the hump over the Himalayas.
That must have been brutal terrain.
Unbelievably tough. Their work and the 7th ERS's efforts meant a really high survival rate for downed airmen in that theater, which is pretty remarkable.
And even the Arctic Alaska.
Yeah.
Those extreme environments forced innovation, too.
Absolutely. Ferrying planes across the North Atlantic, the Bolero movement, that highlighted the massive challenges of Arctic rescue. Colonel Bert Balchin's Task Force 8 faced insane weather.
What did they use?
All sorts. Different planes, even motor sledges, dog sleds on the ground. The Aleutian campaign also saw major rescue efforts in incredibly remote, harsh places.
Adaptability seems key.
Totally. And it's worth remembering, even back in '44, a little R-4 helicopter from the 1st Air Commando Group pulled off the first documented combat rescue in Burma.
The first one. With a helicopter.
Yeah, a very early sign of things to come.
Okay, that really sets the stage. So World War II ends. What's the next big step in making CSAR official, more structured?
That would be the creation of the Air Rescue Service, the ARS, in 1946. Super important moment.
Who was behind that?
Initially pushed by General Vandenberg, but Colonel Richard T. Knight really championed it. He was passionate about building a dedicated rescue capability for the brand new Air Force.
That's like a key figure.
Absolutely crucial. He shaped its identity, even came up with the motto and emblem, tireless advocate. And importantly, 1947 is when USAF Pararescue became official, building on those brave guys from WWII.
Got it. And then came Korea. That must have been a massive test for this new ARS.
Huge test. The Korean War really ramped things up. They used long-range planes like the SB-29 and the SA-16 amphibian.
Like the helicopters. That's where they really shone.
Exactly. The H-5 and later the H-19 helicopters proved invaluable in that rugged terrain, rescuing downed pilots, stranded soldiers. They made a massive difference to survival rates compared to WWII.
Wow. Did they go deep into enemy territory?
Oh, yeah. The 3rd Air Rescue Squadron especially did some incredibly daring rescues way behind enemy lines. The numbers are staggering. ARS airlifted nearly 10,000 people to safety during that war.
10,000. Incredible. So the lessons from Korea, they must have pushed further changes during the Cold War.
For sure. After Korea, there was more standardization, reorganization. The focus shifted a bit towards longer-range fixed-wing planes like the Se-54 and definitely more powerful helicopters like the SH-21B.
Technology improving too, I assume? Comms, navigation?
Big time. And interestingly, the ARS even supported the early NASA space flights. Recovering astronauts after splashdown Scott Carpenter, the Gemini 8 crew, showed their versatility.
No kidding. Space race support.
Yeah. And they were involved during the Cuban Missile Crisis, too, in a support role.
Then comes Vietnam, Southeast Asia, another major conflict, another catalyst for CSAR evolution. Seemed like that led to a name change, too.
It did. With the conflict escalating, ARS set up units there, and in 1965, they were redesignated the Air Rescue and Recovery Service, ARS.
Recovery, so a broader mission.
Yeah, reflected that increased emphasis on recovery, especially from hostile areas. And the sheer number of missions flown, ARS saved thousands of lives during that war, but it came at a cost. They suffered their first aircraft loss to enemy fire then.
A grim reminder of the risk. And the intensity of that war, it really pushed technology forward, right? We started hearing about the famous Jolly Greens.
Absolutely. Southeast Asia drove huge technical leaps. The HH-3 Jolly Green, then the bigger, tougher HH-53 Super Jolly Green. They were game changers. More range, speed, armor.
And refueling. That must have been huge.
Massive. In-flight refueling from HC-130 Kingbirds extended their reach dramatically, plus other things like the Fulton Star system, that surface-to-air recovery rig.
Right. I've seen footage of that. Looks wild.
It was. And the HH-53 Pave Hawk III came out of this period, too, with its night and all-weather capabilities. Super important development.
They were involved in some big moments, too, aren't they? End of the war stuff.
Definitely. Operations Eagle pull the Fontaine evacuation, Frequent Wind the fall of Saigon, and rescuing the crew of the SS Mayagas. After the war ended, ARS really focused hard on the combat rescue mission, and the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center, AFRCC, was set up in '74 to coordinate stateside rescues.
Fascinating. Okay, so post-Vietnam, leading up to the first Gulf War, more changes, organizational shifts. Sounds like special operations became more prominent.
Yeah, the failed Iran hostage rescue attempt, Operation Eagle Claw, really underscored the need for specialized capabilities. That led directly to the advanced HH-53 Pave Lows being transferred to the 1st Special Operations Wing.
Okay.
Then there was more reorganization, leading eventually to Air Force Special Operations Command, AFSCC, bringing Special Ops Air assets together. ARS actually got deactivated briefly in '89, then reactivated under Military Airlift Command.
So did ARS fly in Desert Storm?
Actually, no. They were right in the middle of switching from the old HH-3s to the UH-60 Blackhawks. So AFSC units with their MH-60s, MH-53s, and the remaining HH-3s handled the CSAR mission during Desert Shield and Storm.
Got it. Timing issue. But they were back providing cover over Iraq after that. Northern and Southern Watch.
They were. ARS and AFOC units rotated through, providing that essential CSAR coverage over the no-fly zones. ARS also kept up its NASA support, even flying the president.
And Bosnia. More joint work there.
Yeah, AFOC and ARS worked together providing CSAR for NATO and U.S. forces. Had some high-profile rescues there, down F-117, F-16 pilots. Really tough condition.
Right, so by the time the global war on terrorism kicks off, these CR crews, they're incredibly experienced.
Battle-hardened is the word. They drew on everything learned from past conflicts, played a huge role in rescues and medevacs in Afghanistan and Iraq, saved countless lives.
And another organizational change happened then, too.
Yeah, in October 2003, the stateside CR units merged into AFOC. Streamlined things, enhanced combat capability, brought Moody Air Force Base into the fold.
Okay, so that brings us right up to the aircraft, specifically the Pave Hawk, the HH-60, the direct predecessor to our main focus today. Tell us about its origins.
Sure. The HH-60 Pave Hawk is basically a modified UH-60 Black Hawk, tailored for the Air Force using their PAVE electronics systems. There was the MH-60G, mostly for special ops insertion recovery.
And the HH-60G.
That was the primary personnel recovery bird for hostile environments, the main CSR platform. Though, like the Black Hawk, super versatile, used for peacetime stuff too.
Yeah.
And yeah, the HH-60W Jolly Green II is now replacing these HH-60Gs.
How did the Pave Hawk itself come about? Started with something called Credible Hawks.
Exactly. Back in the late 80s, those were essentially standard UH-60As fitted with refueling probes and extra fuel tanks for longer range.
Kind of an initial upgrade.
Right. Then those, plus new airframes, got more heavily modified into the MH-60G for special ops and the HH-60G for CRR.
What kind of upgrades did the HH-60G get? Sounds like quite a bit.
Oh yeah, a whole suite. Better comms and navigation, INS, GPS, Doppler nav, SACOM, secure voice, automatic flight controls, night vision goggle compatible cockpit, FLIR sensor for seeing at night or bad weather.
FLIR, right.
Weather radar, engine and rotor de-icing, the refueling probe, extra fuel tanks inside, mounts for miniguns or .50 cals, cargo hook, folding blades for transport.
Okay, a lot of capability packed in there.
Definitely. Plus defensive stuff, radar warning receiver, IR jammer, flares, chaff, and of course the rescue hoist and systems to locate downed personnel. It was a very capable machine for its time.
But eventually it needed replacing, which led to the HH-60W program.
Precisely. There were a few attempts for studies over the years, but ultimately the Combat Rescue Helicopter, or CRH program, got going and selected the HH-60W based on the newer UH-60M Black Hawk variant.
Okay, finally let's talk about the star. The HH-60W Jolly Green II, what makes it such a big step up?
It really is a significant leap. Being based on the UH-60M means it has more power, much better payload capacity than the HH-60G it's replacing.
More power, carry more stuff, simple but effective.
Right. And that Army recognition article mentioned it has an expanded rotor system and is about 4,000 pounds lighter than the G model. That all adds up to better performance, more range, ability to operate in tougher conditions.
And speaking of tough conditions, that testing sounds pretty intense. You mentioned Flight Global covered it.
Absolutely brutal testing at Eglin Air Force Base. They subjected it to extreme heat, like 49 Celsius, that's 120 Fahrenheit, and extreme cold down to minus 51 C, which is minus 60 F, plus high winds, nearly 40 knots, and simulated heavy rain like 130 gallons a minute poured on it.
They really tried to break it.
Pretty much. The idea was to stress everything avionics, electronics, engines, structures, and also make sure the crew could actually operate the thing safely under those conditions.
Good to know it passed. So where are we with deployment? How many are out there?
Well, the initial order was for 22, but the plan is for 113 total to replace all the old HH-60Gs. The first production one was delivered back in April 2021.
And it got the Jolly Green Tizen name. Nice nod to the history.
Yeah, named in February 2020. Very fitting. And Flight Global reported the first two actually went to the 41st Rescue Squadron back in November 2020, so they're actively flying now.
It really has been quite the journey to trace. From, those early ad hoc efforts in WWII right up to this super advanced HH-60W. It really hits home, that Air Force Special Ops motto.
These things we do that others may live.
Exactly. That commitment just shines through the whole history.
It really does. This whole evolution, it's about constant innovation, driven by that fundamental need to bring people home safely from incredibly dangerous situations.
So wrapping this up, maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Technology keeps marching on, right? And unfortunately, the world stays complex. What kind of future innovations do you think we might see in combat search and rescue? What new challenges will the next generation need to tackle?